I'm Justin Bruni with the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. I specialize in sports betting and fantasy football, and I've really taken the two and merged them together to find success in both platforms. So if I'm looking at numbers or lines, I'm using the fantasy data that I'm using, the same things that I'm using to make start and sit questions. I'm trying to leverage that information the same way I want to attack props. Main thing for me, I just try to find picks to make that I'm not going to lose sleep at night. I follow my own rules and I stick to those. I don't bet emotionally. I don't, make any picks backed by like sensational content. I think that's very important. And overall, I'm just a very disciplined bettor. So you won't see me making a lot of those like 10x, 12x, 15x type of bets. I'm looking for more of a safer floor. Just the same way people are looking for that in fantasy football, I'm looking to just make very simple profits off of my props, whether it's game props, player props, whatever it is. I want to not go to bed at night, really angry at myself for losing on a hook. I won't do that because whatever my pick will be based off of will either be some type of trend or a safe floor that I'm not worried about buying into. If I lose, like, okay, that's cool. The math didn't play out for me today. It's going to play out for me tomorrow and in the long run. So that's how I like to bet. There's a lot of people that do it very sporadically, and then they're like, oh, I can't do props, this and that, because, oh, I always lose this way. Someone says, oh, I always have to take the under, and then this random over hits for somebody that, was, hitting the under 4 out of his last 5 games or whatever it was. Like, well, yeah, you're gonna have those moments, but if you play it in the long run and you play it in a disciplined manner, you're gonna have success.
Hi, I'm Eric Froton with NBC Sports and Roto World. Roto World is back, thankfully. Started out in 2001 when I drafted Luke Staley, All-American running back, BYU. It's my first ever college fantasy football player. It's become an obsession for the past 23 years, and it turns out that skill set that I acquired when I was looking at players, projecting their performance on a week-to-week basis from a fantasy perspective, similar to you, Justin, it translated directly to college football player props. So in 2016, 2017, during the arms race of FanDuel and DraftKings, when they started just taking all comers, they were allowing you to bet 1, 3, 5,000 sometimes at a time on these props, where you're not betting on a team. There are 11 guys on each side, just betting on one, just betting on one line. How many yards are they going to get? Running, passing, receiving, etc. And by exploiting information as well as just systemic edges, just knowing the landscape of college better from that sort of a perspective, I was able to be very profitable. Started writing in 2018, transitioning from a previous career, and through college fantasy success and getting picked up by NBC, writing when the FSWA 2020 College Sports Writer of the Year Award. For the past 4 years, I have put out a column every week, as well as other assorted plays for NBC, specifically pertaining to college football props, and then obviously some games. But the props, first year I went 69%, second year 71%. Last year I dipped to 68%. That is coming out. Settled lines, here it is. I host a show every Saturday morning on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And my went 18-4 on my best bets for that show right before game time. So those are all settled lines. So the point being is, and this is something I was having a conversation with, wanting to get with everybody who's listening, there are new players in the marketplace now in the college football player props world. And Win may dip their toes. We saw Bet Rivers put out a ton of season-long props. They got destroyed. And then subsequently, just last week, our friends over at Caesars decided to enter the marketplace, and they got similarly corrected on their pathetic line. It's an amazing world we live in. I'm just thrilled that we are in an emerging marketplace. Does it get tighter on some platforms? Yes. Do we have to be evasive in how we approach getting our accounts and getting our bets in? Sure. That's the way of the world. But with more and more people coming into our space that aren't as seasoned, aren't the FanDuels, aren't the DraftKings who have been doing this, and settled their science, the better off we're all going to be. So I'm down to open the floor to some questions.
Don't speak too loudly.
Sure. Yeah, they put out Sam Hartman at 3,400 passing yards, right? The settled market had already been pretty much, 2,900, right around that range. Because what happens is season-wide, that's just, season long. But as the cadence gets through, day to day, Prize Picks leads everything on the college football player props, right? So they'll come out sometimes Monday, but you'll have a fairly respectable P5 slate coming out on Tuesday afternoon to parse through. And once those come out, I mean, they're chum in the water. Everybody's hopping them, everybody's getting on them. But they don't come out with the same amount of props and in the same way that FanDuel does, because you're not limited by $250. You're not dealing with having to parlay everything. And I know that we had talked before, cameras are rolling, about how you like to put the string it all together, like, oh, let me put this in and piecemeal it and just come up with this perfect stew of bets. And I understand and appreciate that. And that is, every time I see somebody hit a $40,000 bet, I'm just like, God damn, it seems so simple. But I've just found over the long run, if you can isolate your best edges and monetize them the best, because there will be things that they miss in college. They always do. It's different than the NFL. It's more of an art form than a science, is how I like to explain it. You can be profitable and you can exploit those edges. So I'm not somebody who philosophically does a lot. I'll go up to I'll try to save it for Prize Picks to do my parlays, because you're forced to. So, fuck, you're going to force it to me, but let's go. Wheels up. Let's do this. But I try to isolate my preferred edges as much as possible on the traditional sites, if I can get it down that way. I don't know if that answered any of your questions, but with Caesars and Bet Rivers coming into the marketplace, so Caesars lined Bet Rivers lined him at 3,400, which is followed by Prize Picks, and then just recently he was listed at 2,600 by Caesars, who went under. So Bet Rivers went way over. Caesars went way under. Like Caesars settled line on Bryce Barr was like 750 or so, plus or minus receiving yards. They had it 550. I'm taking okay. Am I looking for season long unders? You're damn right. Am I taking Brock Bowers at 550? Wheels up, rock and roll. So there's all types of market inefficiencies that can be exploited that just aren't there in the same way as the NFL is. Now, I will give it to my co-host here.
Hi, my name's Eric. I'm Patriot Sports, FPSR host guy. Right, weekly prop betting articles. Is that what we're doing? Introductions? Or are we talking about season unders? I only found 7 quarterbacks who went over their yardage totals. So do we just bet quarterback unders? Is that the move? What, Mahomes, Herbert, super efficient guys like Cousins went over. But other than that, between injuries and circumstance, I mean, unders. What's up, Andrew? What was the question? I just heard season-long unders, and I was like, I love those.
Hell yeah, brother.
Big fan. Yeah. Quarterback yardage totals. Look at those. Look at what the line was last year and what they did. I have some numbers in my pocket if you want.
Yeah. Any other questions you guys had? We could roll through. Definitely a point that Eric brought up was shopping your platforms, right? Shopping for numbers. And that's probably the most important thing for me. So a really good example, like James Cook on DraftKings, 700 rushing yards for the season. On Underdog, he's at 600. And I think even with PointsBet, there's kind of like that dip a little bit because they know you have to put in multiple picks, right? So I'm okay with that because I'm shopping all of these numbers and I'm comparing, who's higher and who's where, and I'm trying to find a trend. Something, a narrative or a trend that I'm able to buy in on, whether it's my personal fantasy take or just my outlook for an offense or an opportunity for a player. So like James Cook, for example, 600 rushing yards. I'm all about that. He almost hit that as a rookie with less than 100 rushing attempts. That's absolutely crazy. Beautiful number. I'm going to pair that with something, again, where if I do wind up losing, I'm just not going to be disappointed because I either did the research and I bought into a situation where I'm just not going to be that upset if I lose. The other thing with that is just managing your bankroll. not going in overweight on certain picks. You know, if you have, say, $1,000 set aside, only 10 to 20% of that should be going into like 4 or 5 leg parlays. You know, if you're going to be doing heavy parlaying, or just sticking, you know, 70% of that into just straight bets. That's it, just and not parlaying anything. Or if you want to do 40 or 50% it with just two pick parlays or things like that, just simplifying your math so that again you're not just like, well, I lost all that, now I have to like dip into my war chest and bury myself even more if the numbers just aren't falling my way. Because at the end of the day, I see people, they dive headfirst over into analytics. They dive headfirst into going with their gut. I like to be in the middle. You know, I like to buy into myself and buy into my takes. That's why I'm here, you know, speaking. Someone thought like, oh, hey, this guy, you know, he makes a lot of picks. He plays a lot of fantasy. He should be doing content for us, right? So I just try to believe in myself as well as back my takes with some type of trend or, you know, information where, hey, if I'm wrong, cool, but I'm not just going to like lose it on myself or being like, oh, I'm done doing this because I lost this amount of money. There's not going to be a time where I lose in 4 days and I can't make a bet on the 5th day. You know what I mean? Because I'm following my rules, and even if I go underwater, I'm going to come back up at some point. Any other like responsible betting tips? No? Okay.
I thought Justin covered it pretty well, but I would say that I never liked betting. I like winning, you know, is how I kind of try to make sure that I keep that frame of mind where I don't want to get outside of my purview of what I personally have gleaned information-wise. Like the work that I've personally done and that I have feelings on. I have people that, you know, we all need to have mentors, syndicate, you know, people that you bounce off that you trust. It's always good to hear if you're over your skis and like getting out of perspective. I always want to hear that. Like it's King Lear. You know, I don't want the sons that are telling me what I want to hear. I want to hear the truth, you know, and be like, hey, I think, you know, you could look at this perspective. So, you know, you want people you trust in your corner. I do think that that's important as a part of being a responsible bettor. You know, I don't think of myself as just an island. And I think of myself as how do I win? And when you have people supporting you that are on the right path, have done it, have been successful, and, you know, can help lead you, I think that's a really important thing. So I stick to what I know. I stick to what I believe in. I stick to where I know the edges are and where I have, you know, a superior knowledge base, and try to do that to the best of my ability and not get over my shoes.
Anything you want to add?
It's like writing. Bet what you know. You know, if you watch a sport and you understand that these secondary, you know, these second, third string players, their playing time is increasing. Maybe these books aren't keeping up with that. You know, you're going to be able to find yardage or assist overs, rebounds, whatever. Yeah.
Any other questions?
You got a mathematically equate?
Yeah, like 70-30. I think that's a really good, because I mean the season is so long. There's going to be so much variance. There's going to be so much change. But at the same time, like Eric was alluding to, there's going to be opportunity. Like there's someone that's going to lay an irresponsible number to pounce on, and you're just at least me personally, I won't be able to stay away. Like I'm just going to see it and go, wow, that's irresponsible. Thank you. You know what I mean? So like but at the same time, I know that it's a long game. I'm going to have all of the regular season for NFL. That's going to transcend into playoffs. I'm a big basketball and hockey guy. So like when he said not betting on what I don't know, I'm not betting on baseball right now. I don't know shit about baseball. Sorry, the language there, camera. But I don't know shit about baseball, so I don't bet on it. I don't touch it. And someone will come to me and say, oh, I've got this edge. I've got this system. It's working. It's hitting at 60, 70%. I'm just like, I will fall into a well. That will take me down a place or a path where I'm going to be irresponsible at some point, and I will break my rules, because the number one rule is bet on what you know. So 70-30 is a good split for me, because again, I'm going to have that 17 weeks, I'm going to have playoffs, and then I'm going to be in like the nitty gritty of my other stuff. And then in the off season, in the summertime where I'm not betting on as much, I'm going to have opportunities for season long bets for whatever, whether it's NFL, hockey, basketball. So I think 70-30 is really good. I think there might be some people that do like 50-50, but I think, you know, for me personally, playing the long game is a lot more strategic.
I'm going to say I'm about 25%, 25-75. I'm just a little more. I believe in the velocity of money. And when you're parking it during what I perceive to be my prime earning season, which is the football season, You know, I don't want to commit too much of my resources to it. I know that there's going to be that little pile of gold that's going to be waiting for me after Thanksgiving. You know, Black Friday comes around, we get our deals, and we get a little pile of money like a leprechaun. I know that's coming, which then I'm going to use to multiply during bowl season, which is, I mean, bowl season is the Wild West. You got team. I mean, it's been bastardized to a point where, you know, there's only 4 games that matter. Everything else, opt-outs, transfers, everybody's hitting the portal. Nobody knows. They're lining teams from the G5 that they've never lined all year, and it's all these different books. It's a festival. So I want to be flush and have as much capital as I can going into that, because it's really where I double my yearly profits. It's just so much bad information. But I'm always wary of parking too much money that I can't turn over with favorable in-season lines and mistakes that I perceive that I want to press. So, you know, I understand 70-30, I understand 50-50. You know, I'd be interested, you know, how you feel about that on the season long.
Yeah, I bet a lot more in season. I'm probably 90-10. I really only look at a couple different things. I only really bet football futures. I don't know enough about baseball. I watch hockey as a casual. I can bet in-season hockey, but I don't know about futures. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, you put their yardage number in front of me and I can do something with that. I've watched this guy play all of his games. I do maybe 10 to a dozen NFL futures because, like you say, I don't like scrolling through my bets and just seeing it sitting there, knowing that I'm 500 yards ahead of this thing, like it's there, and I want to put it on Steelers -3 tonight, but I can't. You know, so yeah, I go pretty light on the futures.
Just to elaborate on that point, it is a little different in college than in the NFL cycle because you're going that full 18 weeks, you know, and you have to wait until the end of week 18. With college, they go the 14 weeks, but it ends right at about, you know, Thanksgiving, and then you get the money, then you get bowl season. So it's like, it's not quite the same cycle to turn it over, which is why I kind of would be in more in the 20-25% range. But you know, great point in terms of it's tough to park it for 18 weeks, the NFL.
You had a question for that?
Yeah, as far as season long, like yardage bets and touchdown production, you find yourself betting the under because of injuries and stuff like that?
I'll just quickly, in a word, yeah, absolutely. Especially the running back position, it happens all the time. I mean, we see it in the NFL. Why those guys don't get contracts anymore? It's because they wear it down. Because they're always getting banged up, and there's always the potential that first, second, third carry of the game they just blow a tire. I mean, it happens constantly. So I know is in the infancy of where props really started to emerge. It was brutal. They were putting out some very high running back lines on a regular basis, and it gradually got whittled down to where the books have, at least on the NFL side, from what I've seen, have adjusted. Again, college is more of an art form than a science. Like you underline a big running back like Rocket Sanders or like Bijan. Like you don't underline Bijan Robinson. Like we're coming. He's coming. He's gonna do it. Like there's the greats and the systems that you just follow. But I would say that you always want to find a reason to find an under. You know, like it's got to be worth it. So many exactly. To put it simply, it's way easier for something not to happen than to happen.
No, 100% agree with that. I think the best opportunity for finding the best value on those is age. You look for an older running back that's got a very high number, and you're kind of looking at it like, he could play 10 games this season and still have like a good year, like maybe even in fantasy for you for those 10 games, but he's not going to hit that total yardage. So I think a good candidate this year would be Saquon Barkley. He's coming off a career season. His numbers are for rushing totals are going to be a lot higher, and he's faced multiple injuries across his career. So still a younger guy, but in the NFL, you know, becoming an older man. So I think that's a really good opportunity. But like younger guys for like receivers, I think those are probably where I would go opposite a little bit, where I get a little bit more like a favorable receiving line for like, I can't remember Zay Flowers, but he would be a guy that I would be targeting for like an over because he's a young guy in an opportunistic offense this upcoming season that's going to make a drastic shift that maybe a lot of the market isn't on. So I can really see both sides of it. But yeah, I mean, you know, they're going to tell you what 55% of unders are going to be smashing for props, right? Like that's a great hit rate. But it's also about finding the right opportunity because it's gone plenty of you know, opposite directions for me where I'm just like, why did I hit that under? Like, why did I do that? Right. So,
Yeah, back to quarterbacks. I was looking last night. Like Mahomes went over, Herbert went over, Lawrence went over, Hurts, but Jackson well under, Prescott well under, injury, Tua under, Russ under, Carr, Stafford, Fields, Tannehill, Trey Lance. There's so many things that can happen in a football season that can either take you out for 2 weeks and now you're 500, 550 yards behind. Like you're probably not going to make that up. So yeah, I look for failure as negative as that sounds, but yeah, like you're saying, it's way easier for something not to happen than for it to happen.
we have a question here.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, obviously there's so much content on there, so much research and stats. I guess, how do you, sift through it all? How do you kind of find, the people that you trust? And, I guess, obviously you guys are doing your own research, but for us.
Stay away from anybody who is only tweeting about how much they win. Avoid those guys. Look for people who show you their process, tell you why they thought this bet was going to come home, and even if it didn't, it probably lines up logically. Yeah, that's what I do. As far as all the information, I don't sift through it all. I pick a couple things that I know pretty well and that I've been following, and like first drive scores, I bet that a lot. I've been noticing like first drive scores happened a lot fewer. It was like week 1, 32 teams have a first drive. The last 2 years ago, it was 12 scored and 20 didn't, and then last year it was 17-15. Like these offenses are coming along, and you can get plus odds on those score on their first drive. Or I like the either team to score 3 times in a row. That's a yes/no prop in the game props. And if you have a competitive divisional game, the only thing that can really burn you is halftime. Is a team getting the ball after half after they just scored. But a competitive game, you're not going to have a lot of teams scoring 3 straight times.
Yeah, I would echo all of that, especially just betting on, again, bringing it back to betting on what you know, right? So as far as like, you could sit there all day and find props to bet on, whether it's game props, player props from any sport. Like, gambling is just so immersive now. It's grown to a peak level, and it's going to continue to grow, especially with like ESPN getting a book now. Like that's really going to normalize what we're doing. So it definitely helps out our industry, but at the same time, it's going to continue to broaden the portfolio and the opportunity for you to expand on all of the betting opportunities. But you just want to go with something that you're comfortable with. Finding props or lines, like he's really sounds like he's on passing yards, right? I don't really mess with passing yards because I see more volatility there. Like it sounds like I got to get in some more unders, but I find the things that I want to focus on and I stick with those things. I don't try to keep my eyes everywhere. The closer you are and the more detailed you are on specific props that you're finding success with yourself, you're going to be able to continue that. You're going to be able to replicate those outcomes. As far as like finding people, he couldn't have said it better. Like anyone that's just talking about how much they won, not going into their process, what trends they looked at, what information they targeted versus what information they avoided. Someone may have not even brought up like the fact that the game was played in a dome, looking at like split stats versus like indoors or outdoors or things like that. There's just so much information out there. Look for the people that are giving you like that sharp type of content and knowledge and something that you may have not have heard before. And then like, do that research extended onto yourself. Like, oh, I've never heard of that before. Let me do a little bit more of digging on that and kind of take it from there. I mean, winning is great, but how are they doing it? For all they entered some generator for DFS or something like that, or looked up projections. They could have been anything.
You don't know how many bets they lost.
They've already covered this, extremely well. I'll try to distill it down to one message. When you're listening to somebody who purports to be an expert, ask yourself every time you listen to them or you read them, did you learn something? Or does this person speak in generalities and platitudes? Or do they come with well-reasoned, logical approach to what they're doing? Because I meticulously write everything that I have, that I put out. There is meticulous, well-reasoned, thought behind it. And you can listen to it and say, all right, that makes sense or it doesn't. But, there's logic behind it that you can at least get to. And I feel like that's the most important thing is just how much are you learning? Are you learning, oh, this player has a 42% broken tackle rate, and that makes him more susceptible to be able to hit this over. Whatever, even if it's a little thing like that, but just what specific detail are they putting in and thought are they showing you that they put into their analysis?
1,000%. Any other questions? Get him. Tell him, Eric. I'm glad we didn't get that on the mic. I would be inclined to take the under. I think the stats that he just highlighted and the rushing upside. It's not always just about like, oh yeah, he should hit that because the offense should be better. It's because a lot of times, especially with Deshaun taking the break, we saw last year when things got bad in the pocket, he'll just go. He'll just take off with his legs. So I do see him as more of a rushing upside quarterback, and I feel like that's where he's going to bring his value in fantasy and honestly probably in props. I think he'll have some favorable rushing props that you'll be able to attack, but season-long passing, I would smash the under. Mhm. Sure. We saw that at the end of last season when he did come back and he did not fare very well in the weather. I mean, that's another really good point. For example, I look at Derek Carr. I don't attack his passing yards, but I did attack his passing touchdowns. They're laying about 23.5. That's his career average. He plays 13 of his 17 games in a dome. That's not to say that Derek Carr has great success playing in a dome. When you look at his stats, I mean, the splits may not even be in his favor, but it just provides less downside. I'm just not getting that exposure to weather. I'm not going to have that problem. He's not going to play in a snow bowl, in Buffalo or in New England. Do we have another question? Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. That I have zero problem with that. And again, because in my situation, like as long as I'm following my rules, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Like as long as I'm being disciplined and the picks are, under my circumstance, like there's something that's backing them, in hockey, like last 5 games, last 10 games, if they're not hitting the number I'm wanting, why didn't they hit that number in that, in those 2 games? Is there a similar narrative coming up in this game, like looking at like goaltending or looking at just playing time, total time on ice, and things like that? Incorporating those things, and as long as I'm hitting my check marks, I have zero issue with that. Do you do that with college football at all, or is it just it's all in?
I try to keep to one sport. Right. It's again, it's what I know. Yeah, I know. It's like I could bet games. I'll bet. I bet games still, just at kind of at lower levels based on because I like to. It's a way of tracking how I feel too. I want to is this intuition right? So I'll lay a little bit, but most of the time, why would I stray from what's working? And the off season is the off season, and just hang out and enjoy San Diego. I guess pretty much. But and then it's in the lab, and that's where we're at now. So again, I'm a little different in that I didn't grow up being like a big gambler. Like I need it wasn't that sort of thing. I like winning, and I like having an information edge and being able to apply it monetarily, which turns into money. So this is how I do it. If it's something I don't understand and it's not in my purview, I just respectfully leave it alone because my process works, and why mess with it?
That's what I love about prop betting. You're counting on one guy, one player to go out there and do his job.
Or not.
I don't. Yeah, or not. Or not. Yeah, that's all. I don't need to worry about too much about officials or teammates. Just go out there. That's why I love quarterback pass attempts and rush attempts. I don't even need you to get yards or complete the pass. Just try. Just just throw the ball 25 times and we're good. You could go over 25. I don't care. I'm over 24 and a half. You know, I like that. Take even one more thing out. Brady was leading the league in pass attempts, yards per attempt. He was a cash cow. That was almost as good as Cam Unders his last season.
Any other questions? You can find me on Twitter at SGPNJB. I work for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. So, yeah, my man. At Gambling Podcast, you can find all of our content. We have a huge umbrella of all sorts of betting content, all sports. So if you are trying to get into something, I always still say, bet responsibly. But we have a portfolio that's just massive. We have WNBA, soccer, tennis, everything. So if you are looking to get in somewhere new, definitely recommend us. But you can always hit me up on Twitter at SGPNJB. Any questions? Just want to shoot the breeze on picks, props, how the Ravens are doing? Ears are always open.
My name is Eric Froton with NBC Sports, Roto World. You can find me on Twitter at CF Froton. You just type in Froton. It's going to come up. Forgive me for the tie and the picture. I'm a surfer guy at heart, but just be ready for the corporate logo. That's all. And you can find my columns, on NBC Sports. I put it out, be it tweets. Sometimes it goes out in my plays go out in video. Other times do columns. I sort of try to put a mix together for NBC, and I'm available all college football season. You may get sick of seeing me if you follow me.
No.
70%. My name's Eric Langenecker at PSR Host Guy on all your social medias. I write for Patriot Sports, patriotsportsnow.com. You can find my props articles weekly. And then we do live streams at Fantasy Sports Core at Fantasy Sports COR. We do a Sunday morning live stream called Wake and Rake, where we talk about fantasy lineups, prop bets, whatever people are wagering on, hour or two before the games. Good times. I have a parting question. How do you guys feel about awards wagers where there's politics involved, like MVP, Coach of the Year, stuff like that? I have not had good luck with them, and I think I'm off them forever.
Yeah, I don't touch them whatsoever. I believe that's voted on by the media, right? Yeah, way too subjective. Way too subjective. It's a good conversation piece. If you're someone in my space, like you're just like focusing on content, come to the end of the season, things are dying down a little bit. It's a good thing to talk about. I do not recommend betting on it. I mean, you can get some very, very good odds, but there's just so many things that can come up. There's just so many subjective factors in that.
Yeah, 3 in a row, clean sweep. Absolutely hate the beauty pageant bets. So much can go into. Who cares? Give me the week to week. Let me turn my money over. Let me just analyze the board and take things that are actually physically happening. So, here. All right. Well, thank you for coming, everyone. Feel free to ask any questions off camera. Have a great. That's it. That's a wrap for the whole thing.